Hey fellow Hedgehogs, it's Brian, and today I've come to present my opinion on something that Sonic fans just love to debate. So I'd like to give my own personal 2 cents to the question. Now the debate I'm talking about is, what is the worst Sonic game of all time? While some Sonic fans will tell you the answer is Sonic 06, some will tell you the answer is Sonic Forces, some might say Sonic Heroes or Sonic 4 Episode 1, others may bring up some of the more obscure titles from the 1990s like Sonic R and the Game Gear titles. I don't think it's any of those. I'm here to tell you what, in my opinion, is the worst Sonic game out of the ones I've played. So let's get started. Remember the original Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis, or Sonic 1 as it's called these days? In its early years, it was obviously regarded as a great and interesting game, and by the standards of the time it obviously was, as it kicked off the series that would let Sega temporarily overtake Nintendo in console sales. By the standards of gaming today, though, and in the Sonic community in recent years, it's been regarded a lot as, well, kind of mediocre. What games like Sonic 2, Sonic Adventure, and other later games in the series did so well with Sonic's gameplay just didn't come from Sonic 1. The pinball-style physics and skillful, fast platforming were things that Sonic 1 did well, in 3 of its 6 stages. Those stages were Green Hill, Spring Yard, and Starlight Zone. Marble Zone had you stop all the time to wait for moving objects to clear your path. Labyrinth Zone was slow because of the water constantly slowing Sonic down, and Scrap Brain Zone was alright for the first 2 acts. And then it goes back to Labyrinth Zone again, and no one likes Labyrinth Zone. The other 3 zones, the ones I mentioned first, are the highlights of the game for most players. Now, this isn't me saying that Sonic 1 is the worst game in the series. I'd say it's far from that. Personally, I love Sonic 1. As I said, it's considered a mediocre game, not a bad game. What then do I think is the worst Sonic game in the series then? That would be Sonic 1 on the Game Boy Advance. Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis, or Sonic 1 GBA as it's called, is objectively the worst experience I've had playing this Sonic game. While I do enjoy parts of it because, well, it's still good old Sonic 1 at heart, it's riddled with a bunch of problems that would make any game bad. What are such problems? For example, the game can randomly lag when objects respawn, making the entire game and all the objects in it, including Sonic, slow down dramatically. Remember, this is a port of a Sega Genesis game, and moving to Game Boy Advance definitely put in a lot of issues. I get it's a handheld, but it's 15 years newer, so what's the problem here? For one thing, the sound font isn't one-to-one by any means, and the beloved background tracks from the original game sound incredibly grating at times. There are also songs that are missing parts of the melody and sound effects that sound completely out of place. Another major issue is that Sonic sprites and the sprites for every other object in the game are the exact same size as they were on the Genesis, in pixels. The Game Boy Advance's screen is 160 pixels tall and 240 wide, but the Sega Genesis outputs 224 scan lines with 320 pixel outputs on each to play Sonic 1. That means you have barely half the screen area of the original game, but the objects are the same size, so they take up more of it. You can only see 53.57% of what you could before, and the way the camera works doesn't help the situation. If you've played Sonic 1, you know that there are a whole bunch of cool hidden secrets, like the moving platform in Labyrinth Zone Act 1 that you can use to skip half the stage just by pressing 2 switches in the water below. Try this in Sonic 1 GBA and the platform won't spawn, and since the physics are off, some areas you used to be able to get to easily will take much more effort. Now, to the game's credit, it does implement a save system that lets you continue once you've turned the Game Boy Advance off, and it also adds the spin dash from Sonic 2 and onwards as an optional feature. The game has 2 modes, Original Mode and Anniversary Mode. The only thing Anniversary Mode does is it adds the spin dash, and it doesn't even do that right. If you've used the spin dash in 2D Sonic games a lot, you probably know that Sonic isn't supposed to take damage from enemies that come in direct contact with him, and that the enemies take damage instead. But in this port, Sonic takes damage and cancels the spin dash completely. They did fix the spike glitch from the original 1991 release, but there's just so much shit in here that it's hard to see that as a benefit. If this were its own original game like Sonic 06 was, the other Sonic 06, as this game also came out in 2006, this would be at least somewhat excusable to have all these issues, but it's not, because this was supposed to be a handheld port of a 15-year-old game to a portable system, and it failed miserably. And we even had the Sonic Advance series of games, like they ran well on the Game Boy Advance. Why couldn't Sonic 1? That is why I consider Sonic 1 GBA or Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis on the Game Boy Advance the absolute worst Sonic game I have ever played. This game sold for $19.99 at retail, half the price of Sonic Origins, and you only get a quarter of the games in it in an even worse condition. Well, that does it for the video. I was kind of inspired to do this because of how Sonic Origins managed to screw up so badly with the original series, and then I remembered there's one game that screwed up one of those games even more. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe button below, and feel free to leave a comment or donate a tip via Super Thanks or Ko-Fi. And remember, fellow hedgehogs, stay safe, stay cool, and I'll see you all next time.